What's going on, Cowboys Nation? Welcome back to the Cowboys News Today. If this is your first time here, this is the place where we break down Cowboys news, rumors, draft talk, free agency, and real football discussions without the hot take nonsense. Before we get into today's news, I need everyone listening right now to do me one quick favor. If you love Dallas Cowboys content, if you love NFL talk, if you enjoy long-form breakdowns like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the like, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. We're answering a ton of Cowboys mailbag questions, and some of these are big ones. We're talking about trade rumors surrounding names like Maxx, Crosby, and Baker. We're diving into Cowboys draft philosophy, including 2026 NFL draft prospects like TJ Parker, Cassius Howell, and Mansour Delane. We're also discussing free agency decisions like Javonte Williams versus Breece Hall, contract extension talks around George Pickens, the idea of franchise tagging Pickens and drafting Jeremiah Smith, and even whether the Cowboys should trade down if they end up with a second first-round pick. On top of all that, we're also talking coaching, Brian Schottenheimer as head coach, and whether Dallas should consider adding Jim Schwartz to the staff as a position coach or defensive advisor. So yeah, this is one of those episodes where you sit back, relax, and really lock in. Let's start with the coaching situation because everything flows from the top down. One of the most common questions I've seen is whether Brian Schottenheimer is actually doing a good job as the Cowboys head coach. When Schottenheimer was hired, the reaction from fans was mixed. Some people felt it was a safe hire, some felt it lacked excitement, and others were willing to wait and see. And honestly, that wait-and-see approach is still the right one. When you look at the team so far, there are clear positives. Offensively, things look more organized. There's better structure, better rhythm, and more balance in certain game situations. Players seem to understand their roles better, and the locker room hasn't shown signs of cracking under pressure. That matters more than people realize. A head coach's job isn't just calling plays. It's managing people, personalities, and expectations. That said, Schottenheimer's real test is going to be how he builds his coaching staff. Great head coaches surround themselves with strong, experienced assistants, and that leads directly into another popular question. Should the Cowboys consider bringing in Jim Schwartz as a position coach or defensive advisor? Jim Schwartz is one of the most respected defensive minds in football. He's known for building dominant defensive lines, creating aggressive pass rush schemes, and maximizing talent up front. If you imagine Jim Schwartz working alongside Micah Parsons and the rest of this defensive front, that's exciting. This wouldn't be about replacing anyone or undermining the current staff. It would be about adding experience, toughness, and another strong voice in the room. The best coaches aren't afraid of help, and if Schottenheimer made a move like that, it would actually show confidence. Now, let's get into the topic that really got Cowboys fans talking, Maxx Crosby. The idea of Maxx Crosby being traded to the Dallas Cowboys sounds wild, but it's not completely insane. Crosby is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. His motor is relentless, his production is elite, and pairing him with Micah Parsons would instantly give Dallas the most feared pass rush in football. Offensive coordinators would lose sleep trying to figure out how to block that. But here's the reality check. A trade for Maxx Crosby would cost a lot. We're talking multiple high draft picks, possibly first-rounders, and then you'd have to pay him a massive contract. This kind of move only makes sense if the Cowboys believe they are firmly in a Super Bowl window right now. Trades like this aren't about long-term value. They're about urgency. They're about saying, we're all in. The big question is whether Jerry Jones is willing to push those chips to the center of the table. Another name connected to the Cowboys in trade rumors is Baker. Baker is a different type of move. He's a veteran safety who brings leadership, physicality, and toughness to the secondary. The Cowboys have talent in the defensive backfield, but what they've lacked at times is experience and consistent run support. Baker would immediately help in that area. The concerns, of course, are age and contract. This wouldn't be a long-term rebuild piece. This would be a win-now addition. But sometimes when you feel close, those are exactly the moves you make to push yourself over the top. That brings us into Cowboys draft philosophy, which is another huge part of this conversation. One of the big mailbag questions is whether the Cowboys should focus on drafting a linebacker instead of taking two cornerbacks. When you look at the roster, Dallas has invested heavily in cornerbacks over the years. Meanwhile, the linebacker group has been inconsistent, especially against the run. A true three-down linebacker could change the entire defense. It might not be the flashiest pick, but it could stabilize the middle of the field, improve tackling, and allow the defensive line to play more aggressively. Sometimes the smartest draft picks aren't the ones that grab headlines. Looking ahead to the 2026 NFL Draft, there are a few names Cowboys fans should start getting familiar with. T.J. Parker out of Clemson is an edge rusher with explosive traits, a quick first step, and the kind of bend around the edge that defensive coordinators love. He fits exactly what Dallas looks for in pass rushers. Cassius Howell from Texas A&M is another edge defender, but he brings more power. He's physical, strong at the point of attack, and has proven himself against SEC competition. He would complement speed rushers like Micah Parsons really well. Then there's Mansour Delane, a versatile defensive back who can play both corner and safety. His football IQ and flexibility would give the Cowboys options in the secondary that very few teams have. Mansour Delane to Dallas makes a lot of sense when you think about modern NFL defenses. Another strategic question is whether the Cowboys should trade down if they end up with a second first-round pick. Trading down isn't flashy, but it's often how strong rosters are built. More picks mean more chances to fill holes, add depth, and stay flexible. If Dallas believes the draft board falls a certain way, moving down could be the smartest move they make. Free agency is another area where tough decisions are coming. The debate between Javonte Williams and Breece Hall is a perfect example. Javonte Williams is a physical runner who would likely come a lower cost and fits a power-based offense. Breece Hall, on the other hand, is an elite, game-changing talent who can run, catch, and take over games, but he would be expensive. This decision really comes down to star power versus financial flexibility. Finally, let's talk about George Pickens. Pickens has undeniable talent, but consistency and maturity remain questions. A contract extension would be a commitment, while a franchise tag would give the Cowboys more time to evaluate. That's where drafting a player like Jeremiah Smith comes into the conversation. Jeremiah Smith could be a true WR1 for the future, giving Dallas long-term security at the position. Franchise tagging Pickens while drafting Smith might be the safest path. The NFL offseason is officially in full force. And for the Dallas Cowboys, this is one of those moments that can quietly define the direction of the franchise for years to come. There are no games being played right now, no touchdowns or interceptions to argue about. But make no mistake, this is where championships are often built or lost. The Cowboys are staring at a long list of important decisions involving their coaching staff, free agency, and the draft. And while some of those decisions are still ahead, one major move has already been made. Dallas has found its new defensive coordinator, hiring former Eagles defensive backs coach and pass game coordinator Christian Parker. At first glance, this isn't a flashy, headline-grabbing name, and for some fans, that immediately raised eyebrows. But when you dig deeper into the process and the reasoning behind the hire, it becomes clear that this was not a rushed or casual decision. This was a deliberate choice rooted in vision, fit, and long-term planning. Speaking at the Senior Bowl, Cowboys COO and co-owner Stephen Jones shed light on what separated Parker from the rest of the field. And it's important to understand just how wide that field actually was. The Cowboys interviewed 9 different candidates for the defensive coordinator position, which already tells you something about how seriously they took this search. In the past, Dallas has sometimes been criticized for being too comfortable, too insular, or too quick to promote from within. This time, they cast a wide net. According to Jones, all 9 candidates were qualified, which makes the final decision even more interesting. What ultimately stood out was not just experience or resume, but alignment. Mike Schottenheimer, now leading the team as head coach, had a clear vision of what he wanted the Cowboys' defense to look like and how it needed to complement the offense. That word, complement, is key. This wasn't about building a defense in isolation. It was about creating a unit that works in harmony with how Dallas wants to play football overall. Christian Parker's vision matched that idea. Jones talked about the personality of the defense Parker wants to build, the culture he wants to establish, and the creativity he can bring schematically. He didn't just talk in generic football language. He presented specific ideas and wrinkles that would fit the personnel already on the roster. That's a huge deal. The Cowboys are not starting from scratch. They have talented players on defense, but talent alone hasn't been enough. What's been missing is consistency, adaptability, and at times identity. Now, Parker's work is really just beginning. Hiring the defensive coordinator is step one. Step two is building out the rest of the defensive staff, and according to Stephen Jones, that process is already well underway. The team has conducted several virtual interviews and is expected to begin in-person interviews shortly. Ideally, the Cowboys would like to have the full defensive staff in place by the weekend, but Jones also acknowledged that it might take longer, and that's okay. This is not an area where you want to rush. Position coaches shape players on a daily basis, and getting the right voices in those rooms matters just as much as who's calling plays on Sunday. While the coaching staff has been one major topic, the roster itself presents even bigger questions, starting with one of the most productive players on the team, wide receiver George Pickens. Pickens is arguably the Cowboys' most significant upcoming unrestricted free agent, coming off a career-best season in which he recorded 1,429 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. He wasn't just productive, he was essential. When the Cowboys needed a big play, Pickens was often the guy delivering it. Unsurprisingly, Stephen Jones didn't dive into contract specifics, and that's typical for this stage of the offseason. But he did make one thing clear. The Cowboys want George Pickens back in Dallas. That statement alone tells you how highly the organization values him. Of course, wanting a player back and actually getting a deal done are two very different things, especially in today's NFL, where elite wide receivers command massive contracts. Jones did note that the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis has historically been a place where meaningful conversations happen between teams, players, and agents. With the combine scheduled from February 23rd to March 2nd, that time frame could be critical in determining whether Pickens' future remains in Dallas or if negotiations drag on into free agency. The Cowboys will have to decide how far they're willing to go financially and whether Pickens is a cornerstone piece or a luxury they can't afford. Another area where there will be some continuity is special teams. Despite significant turnover on the coaching staff, Nick Sorensen will return as special teams coordinator for the 2026 season. However, Stephen Jones was very clear that retention does not equal satisfaction. The Cowboys expect improvement in the third phase of the game. They believe they have solid pieces, a reliable returner, a punter, a kicker, and a snapper, but execution has to be better. Jones also made an interesting point about how defensive talent often translates to stronger special teams play. Players who can tackle, run, and play with discipline on defense are usually the same players who excel on special teams. In that sense, improving the defense overall could have a ripple effect across the entire roster. One of the more encouraging updates from Jones involved running back Javonte Williams. Williams had an outstanding 2025 season, rushing for 1,201 yards and 11 touchdowns, and he proved to be a consistent, physical presence in the Cowboys' offense. Jones confirmed that the team has already spoken with Williams' representatives and made it clear that Williams is a priority for the organization. In fact, at the Cowboys' year-end press conference earlier this month, Jones said that Williams is at the top of our list to go out and sign, and that the team would like to get him on a multi-year deal. That kind of language matters. It signals commitment and stability, two things that are incredibly valuable at the running back position. Keeping Williams in Dallas would give the offense a dependable foundation, especially as the coaching staff continues to shape its identity. As free agency approaches, the Cowboys' overall plan is starting to take shape. The emphasis is on retaining key players from last season, guys like Pickens, Williams, and Jadeveon Clowney, while also finding ways to improve the roster, particularly on defense. Stephen Jones acknowledged that the defensive side of the ball still needs work, but he also expressed confidence that the team has the resources to address those issues. Between free agency and the draft, the Cowboys have options. They can add proven veterans, inject young talent, or do a combination of both. The challenge will be using those resources wisely and ensuring that every move aligns with the vision set by the coaching staff. This offseason is not about making noise for the sake of it. It's about building a team that can compete at the highest level when it matters most. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, it's clear that the Cowboys are at a pivotal point. The hire of Christian Parker signals a shift toward intentionality and fit. The desire to retain core players like Pickens and Williams shows a commitment to continuity. And the focus on improving the defense underscores it. Best organizations